All right, looks like we're live. Welcome, everyone. We're here today with a live stream. We're joined by both Sriram as well as Mark Radon, the founder of Aethir. And we're going to be diving deep into decentralized GPU infra. We're going to be diving into Aethir. We're going to learn everything about what they've been building. And we're really excited to kind of be live streaming today on this first AVS Spotlight that we're doing as a live stream, which has been something we've been excited about. So yeah, first of all, welcome both of you. Do you want to do a quick intro for yourself, Mark, and then we'll get Sriram as well?
Sure, yeah. Mark here, co-founder of Aethir. Very, very excited to be here. Do you want me to jump into my background a little bit now or talk about that a little bit later on?
Yeah, sure. Feel free to dive right in.
All right, yeah. So my background is in infrastructure building, started in oil and gas, building big infrastructure projects, very remote places. Did that for the first kind of 6 or 7 years of my career before feeling the entrepreneurial itch. Out of my first company, it was a biotech company. Actually, moved to China to get closer to manufacturing, raised some money, and worked on that project for a couple of years before exiting and feeling my way back into infrastructure. This is where I first started to touch the cloud. Right, there was a lot of really, really cool infrastructure builds happening, cloud infrastructure builds happening in China at the time. It just so happened that China was very focused on the GPU cloud in a way that I didn't really think or see happening as much in other markets. Worked closely with some really smart people on growing that type of infrastructure and realized that there was an opportunity to combine what my co-founder and I understood of kind of decentralized hardware networks. There wasn't really deep in as a category then, but certainly everyone understood how Bitcoin worked, right? You have a bunch of hardware contributing to a same shared network objective, and they were rewarded in Bitcoin. We're like, well, maybe we could build a GPU cloud in the same way. The focus initially was very much on gaming, right? So this was kind of a cloud gaming cloud, right? A GPU cloud focused on kind of abstracting away the hardware requirements of a gamer so that we could pump out AAA games to every single gamer out there in the world. The concept was, can we scale this incredible technology that does exist, right? Cloud gaming does exist. It is an established tech, but it's just really expensive to scale. Can we fix that scalability issue? That allows us to take that tech and put it into kind of emerging markets, these places where the majority of gamers live, but they also don't, unfortunately, have kind of high-end hardware. And that would be kind of simultaneously a great opportunity for us, but a great opportunity for all those kind of massive gaming companies out there that have these incredible gaming IPs that they would love to kind of expose to far more gamers than they can currently hit. So that was kind of the origin story. We realized pretty quickly that having this big kind of enterprise-focused GPU cloud was pretty relevant to the AI space as well. So we started to kind of very quickly lean more heavily into that, and it's been a pretty wild ride since then.
Amazing. Sriram, do you want to do a quick intro to yourself? And then also maybe for people that don't know what EigenLayer is, a TLDR?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Nader. Thank you, Mark. Really, really excited to work together. And my quick background, I started the EigenLayer project like 3.5 years back. Before that, used to be a professor at the University of Washington, Seattle, where I ran the UW Blockchain Research Lab. We were working on like how do you scale consensus protocols, what is the game theory of these things, what are the right economic models, all this kind of stuff. And as an academic, one of the things I found to be a huge friction is how do you experiment with building new decentralized protocols? Every time you have a new decentralized protocol, you need to go and spin up a new layer one, which is an extraordinary lift for pretty much most projects. And it's just redundant work, right? There's already a pool of how can we reduce the barriers to entry for a new developer to come and spin up new networks. That's what gave rise to our project EigenLayer. Eigen in German for your own layer. It's a call for anybody to come in and build their own layer, their own layers of technology to contribute to this blockchain stack, which should be open, permissionless, and equal access for all of us. So that is the original values through which it got started. And over the last 3 years, I think we have bootstrapped multiple sides of this marketplace. You can think of stakers, people who bring in stake. originally started with ETH restaking, but now it's permissionless staking platform. You can stake any assets, whether it's native tokens created by new protocols or anything that can be represented and bridged safely to Ethereum. So that's on the staking side. The growth has been from we started with our original launch was capped at $25 million of TVL, $25 million of TVL, and now we're at like $15+ billion of TVL over the last year plus. And on the operator side, anybody can participate, from like small node operators who can run smaller AVSs to large scale, professional grade operators. And we have 1,700 operators on the network, spanning from like many home operators to somebody like Google Cloud running a first-party node operator on the EigenLayer ecosystem. So that's the span of the second side of the marketplace, operators. The third side of our marketplace is AVSs. We used to call them actively validated services. We are pivoting to this new term, autonomous verifiable services. Autonomous, they run on their own. Verifiable, if you run it, other people can verify in some sense that you ran it correctly. We have this whole protocol for verifying, slashing, whether somebody ran the thing correctly or not. So we call these AVSs. And AVSs are network services anybody builds on top of like EigenLayer. And we have 100+ AVSs in different stages of development, 25+ on the mainnet on Ethereum. This also spans a wide variety of like partners, from new homegrown innovators hacking through hackathons that Nader and others in our ecosystem lead, to somebody like Infura or working with Layer 0 or big partners, and hopefully Aethir. So which is why we're here. So that's the broad scope of the platform, bringing all these sites together and getting these started. As Mark can speak to the GPU side. Always bringing the multiple sides of the marketplace is the hardest part, and it's been really amazing to see how we've been able to do that here.
Amazing. Good overview of EigenLayer for anyone new. So now let's dive into GPU infrastructure. So GPU infrastructure has existed since the cloud, I guess, or even before that, right? But people are now renting it. But now we're talking about like decentralized GPU infrastructure, which I think might be new to some people. And it kind of is, I would say, new period to the entire space, because this has not been something that has been kind of like a thing for very long. So yeah, do you mind maybe diving into kind of like a definition of if someone asks you what decentralized GPU infrastructure is, like what the answer to that would be?
Sure. I think an easy way to kind of think about it, right, is we're like a Google Cloud or an AWS, but we're focused exclusively on GPUs, right? And we don't own any of the GPUs in the cloud. We're kind of like, I think the term that most people use, kind of like an Airbnb for GPUs, right? I actually, I don't like this analogy as much, right? Because there is a kind of an assumption that there's a retail component to our compute as a result, right? Because Airbnb is about consumer homes. Actually, I think a better analogy is maybe a Booking.com, right? Where they bring hotel rooms onto a platform, right? Because at Aethir, we're a decentralized GPU cloud, but all of the compute within our networks provided by data centers, infrastructure players, tech startups, telcos, pretty much anyone that's got access to enterprise-grade GPUs, or GPUs plugged into kind of enterprise-grade infrastructure, is able to contribute those GPUs to Aethir's network, as long as those are the GPUs that are needed by the market, right? We don't have a kind of an open gate to contributing compute. We have a very strict sort of requirement from a compute perspective, and that's just because we want to make sure the compute within our network is actually able to serve the customers out there that are needing compute. Right, and that focus on making sure there's this kind of high synergy between the compute that we provide and the compute that's needed by the market. It's one of the reasons why we've been able to kind of reach the revenue numbers that we have. I think we're sitting at around 110 million in annual recurring revenue at the moment, which is pretty insane. I think we just pipped Solana, actually. Yeah, which is insane. But it's very, very cool. But effectively, we're a network of GPUs. We don't own any of the GPUs. We create this infrastructure layer where it's really easy for these GPU owners to trust our ecosystem, to connect into that network, and then match with demand from all over the world. Actually, Shriram, and you'll have to tell me if I'm crazy or totally kind of off piste here, right? But I think there's actually a lot of similarity between what we do and what EigenLayer does, right? If you think about EigenLayer as accessing underutilized trust in a network, right? And then making that trust available again for a distributed collection of builders, right, all over the world. You talked about reducing friction, right, for new networks to spin up. Aethir is very much the same, right? You've got a whole bunch of enterprise compute out there that was, say, purchased by a tech company that maybe doesn't have the ability to utilize 100% of that compute. Well, now, if there's underutilized compute in the network, instead of it just sitting there burning a hole in their pocket or providing no value, right, they can take that compute, allocate it to Aethir's network, and then we can redistribute it and match it with demand, again, reducing the barrier entry for builders in the AI space, right, to kind of produce cool stuff. So I think there's kind of an analogy there, right? We take this underutilized compute that exists and is locked up in kind of big infrastructure blobs with companies that don't have the ability to kind of redistribute or the infrastructure to redistribute that compute in the same way that I understand you guys do with trust and stake. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great mapping.
So what is the general, and you kind of hinted to this already, but like if someone was to say, like, what's the value proposition here? Why is this better than just using centralized compute on AWS?
Yeah, so I think the main problem that builders in the AI space face today is just access to compute in general, right? It's really, really difficult as a builder to access this high performance AI compute, right? You see, Elon Musk and Zuckerberg building these, multi-billion-dollar GPU clusters for their own internal purposes, right? A vast majority of supply goes to the biggest players in the market, leaving a relatively small amount of these very specific high-performance GPUs available for everyone else, right? And you then have to remember that allocation left for everyone else is getting sucked up by big tech companies that maybe just aren't as famous, right? And at the end of the day, there's a limited amount left in distribution for builders, right? And then you have to think about, okay, what does that distribution actually look like, right? Do I have to go to AWS to get access to the compute? Do I have to go to a separate sort of neo cloud? And unfortunately, just as a result of kind of basic market action, right, this compute ends up being put into very expensive compute packages, very, I would say, not founder or startup friendly contracts, right? Because they really want to have that compute allocated for 6-12 months at a time, upfront payments. It's not a great, again, time for founders to be out there building on high performance compute. There's a lot of friction, like Shriram mentioned earlier. And what we do is effectively take that underutilized supply, redistribute it in our network. So we're adding net new supply to the ecosystem, right? So first of all, there's now new compute out there that wouldn't have been out there before, right? Reducing that supply pressure, right? And then on top of that, we're very conscious of making access to that compute as founder friendly as possible, right? Can you get it on a month by month basis? Yes. Can you come in and test the infrastructure before you use it? Yes, right? We really try and create an environment where small builders can access compute rapidly with as little kind of financial burden as possible, and then get up and start building. And in general, just as a rule of thumb, we're anywhere from 60 to 80%, and sometimes 5x cheaper than what you see for equivalent machines in the centralized space.
See, that's a huge value prop right there. Just the cost itself, regardless of everything else, is huge, right? I mean, that when you kind of start looking at a lot of the training that's being done and how that's being scaled up, it becomes just enormously expensive. So, I mean, just
Absolutely.
talking about it from that perspective alone is huge. What does the developer experience look like? So, if I wanted to go and use some of this infrastructure, I'm used to using like a DigitalOcean droplet or an EC2 instance, or maybe going into AWS using some type of CloudFormation template or some infrastructure as code. Very curious to understand how that looks, and from this perspective, from the perspective of a developer, I guess.
Yeah, it's very, very easy, right? Both from contribution of compute and also access to compute, we're trying to avoid reinventing the wheel in any way, right? I think we're already cognizant of the fact that we're a Web3 company in a predominantly Web2 space, right? We don't want to be out there having to re-educate our customers, teaching them new ways to access something that they don't really need a new way to access, right? We've been accessing compute, we've been accessing GPUs via the cloud for a while now. Everyone has their flow, and we try and keep that flow as consistent with what is familiar as possible. At the moment, if you're accessing compute through our network, you're actually accessing bare metal, right? So we connect the bare metal compute direct to the developer. They can come in through our platform, pretty much select, okay, I want these GPUs in this quantity in this location, and then they can, through our platform, get access directly to that bare metal infrastructure. Similarly, on the provision side, you can again come into the platform, access our APIs, and really get your compute up and running in the ecosystem in a matter of kind of an hour or two. So it's really a seamless process. I think the main difference between accessing compute in our network and in a Web2 environment, of course, is the fact that you have to buy the compute using the token, right? So you have to come in, you have to get the ATH token. You can get it however you want. And then once you have that ATH token, you can use that to purchase the compute. Now, to be fair, we're well aware, as being a very enterprise-focused company, that not every enterprise has the ability to transact in ATH token, right? Maybe they can't buy tokens, maybe they can't hold tokens, maybe they're not willing to kind of absorb tokens onto their balance sheet. So we actually do have kind of a service entity that we've stood up that operates as a middleman in these sort of situations, that's able to hold a little bit of that token volatility risk if it exists, and kind of operate so that we can pull these big customers in. I think, honestly, by forcing your Web2 customers through a Web3 gate consistently, you're going to lose out on a lot of great opportunities. But at the same time, you as a Web3 company, you need to be driving all your revenue, all your value accrual to the token. So you do still need that pathway to exist. And that's something that we're pretty proud to have been able to kind of solve, as I do think it's a massive issue for a lot of kind of big Web2 focused Web3 companies out there.
So what are some of the challenges of building this type of infrastructure and having it be decentralized? And also, how do you feel that EigenLayer helps solve that challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, in any decentralized marketplace, right, trust is a massive issue. We have compute coming in from a large number of providers, right? Those providers are all over the world, right? The benefit of a DPIN is its scalability, right? Anyone can contribute if they meet the network kind of requirements, and that gives you this like massive advantage in kind of scalability and distribution. But there needs to be some way to kind of validate and trust those contributors, right? For example, if there's a 4090 GPU in my network, right? I don't own that 4090. So how can I confirm and guarantee that 4090 is actually a 4090, right? And then how can I kind of guarantee that the work that they're doing is actually the work they say they're doing, right? And then how can they simultaneously have trust in our network that when they do the work, they're going to be rewarded, right? So trust is kind of a critical piece of what we're building. And it's definitely something that I think is the largest challenge in general that you need to overcome within any of these types of ecosystems, right? So again, similarities to what Shiram was mentioning earlier in Aethir, and again, many distributed hardware networks, that means that there needs to be an element of stake, right? The hardware provider needs to say, hey, here's something that I'm putting on the line so that if I misbehave or if I lie or if I act poorly in the network, you have something that you can use to kind of penalize me, but also to offset the damage to the network, because we would have had customers on that compute, right? We're out there allowing people to use that infrastructure, and our reputation's on the line as a result of those contracts that we enable through that interaction. So having something that is there to stake is critical, and this is, I think, where our relationship with EigenLayer really comes into play, right? Because there's a whole bunch, I would say the vast majority of compute out there that's not owned by Web3 GPU owners, right? So they're not really cognizant of this idea of stake, right? And also, if you're a company that's looking to become a data center or a large high-performance compute infrastructure provider, right? You're not sitting on a bunch of cash to make available for staking, right? You're reinvesting that into GPUs. Why would you have that idle cash sitting around? But when you take these clusters and you say, hey, how would you like to come onto Aethir? They'd be like, we'd love to come onto Aethir, right? The infrastructure rewards are far greater, right? The utilization of your network is really high. You can guarantee a certain payback for our infrastructure in a way that we maybe necessarily can't in Web 2. It would be great for us to join. But this stake thing is a really big kind of a barrier to overcome. So what we're kind of looking at a lot is this opportunity to effectively kind of conduct like a third-party stake, right? Where you can have someone else or a collection of people take an amount of capital, stake it on behalf of a GPU provider, and then share in the yield that GPU provider is generating as a result of conducting work within our ecosystem. And this is where EigenLayer fits in so perfectly with the infrastructure that they've built.
Shiram, when you first came up with the idea of EigenLayer, did you ever imagine you would see amazing stuff like this being built on it? I mean,
that's the whole thesis of open innovation, is we don't know what things should be built, right? And this is such a salient example here, because here is a real protocol which is serving real users, right? Enterprise customers, bringing in high-grade compute. And the thing that I always go back to in these kinds of use cases is why do we need this trust? And Mark alluded to this a little bit earlier in his explanation. But I think what happens is when you go from permissioned, which is, hey, I'm Amazon, I have root, I'm God, so you're going to trust me, and I have built my reputation over 30 years. Yes, so people will trust them. Whereas if we want to open up the market, that's when trust becomes the lubricant on which the whole market runs. Because this question is, Amazon doesn't stake. Like, why do we need now all the cloud operators on Aethir to come and stake? And the reason is Amazon's building its business on its personal reputation and legal liability and so on. Whereas Mark and Aethir wants to build a permissionless, much more open marketplace. It's for businesses, enterprise grade, high SLA, but still open. Anybody who meets those requirements can play as an equal here. But how do we trust these guys, right? Who are these people? How do we know we can trust them? And they are thinking, who are the other guys who are buying the compute, right? And this is really why, when an Uber or an Airbnb solves that trust problem by creating a reputation system, creating some mechanism to lubricate trust through the ecosystem, suddenly you have an explosion of an ecosystem. That's really what we're seeing here is the kind of, hopefully the very early stages of this big hockey stick coming up. And trust, basically solving trust, can like eliminate a lot of those frictions. And Mark was alluding to this idea of like the problem is an operator, a cloud GPU operator, doesn't necessarily have the stake themselves, right? Can you actually separate the role and say like, oh, there's different group of nodes which are operators and different group of nodes which are stakers, and the stakers are really what they're doing is curating which should be the best operators. They're using their judgment, real world understanding. Maybe they look at their profile, they look at where they're incorporated, they look at various things to say, is it somebody trustworthy that I can stake on? So this separation of stakers and operators is a natural structure of the EigenLayer marketplace. So in EigenLayer, they could come in and each staker can exert their judgment. Why are the stakers getting paid? Because they are bringing their subjective judgment to lubricate, to make this market trustworthy. And that's why they're getting paid a portion along with the operators. Of course, if the operator can stake themselves, then they can take all the fee. But if not, then it gets shared between somebody who's underwriting trust, the staker who's putting up their money, and potentially they may lose some of it if they exerted bad judgment. And you need to keep these checks and balances in order to actually make this a functional marketplace. And that's really what is very exciting about this is when you open up these marketplaces, you get this trust problem. And this is a great example of where like something like EigenLayer can come in and solve the trust problem. And because EigenLayer itself is a permissionless open marketplace, what token should be staked? This can drive value back to the Aethir token because now it can be used as a token of stake in the open EigenLayer marketplace. So feeding back value accrual to the stakers who are well invested in the growth and well-being of the network, now playing this role of judgment of finding who are good operators. If there's a good operator who doesn't have any stake allocated to them, there is an alpha for somebody to chase to say like, hey, I'm going to stake to them, so I'm getting this. So that's a really like nice match. Not just at this level, I'm excited about Aethir. I'm also excited about AVSs and applications building on EigenLayer, consuming these services. So it's also the other end of this pipeline. So over the last 6 months, we've been realizing that what we've really built is like trust for off-chain compute, right? Like that's really what it is. So if you think about trust for off-chain compute, what is the category of compute that needs the most, that people want to engage with the most? And of course, it's AI, right? So, and we are seeing AI as an emerging major category of applications being built on top of EigenLayer. For example, I want to do inference. Okay, inference needs to be verifiable. Why does inference need to be verifiable? Because the output of the inference is consumed by a smart contract, and the smart contract needs to know that the output is correct, right? So you have inference, you have, and okay, so you have AI inference. Is that all you need? No, actually, what we started realizing is that you have these concepts of agents, right? And agents are just models which call APIs. So if you want to make agents trustless, then it's not just that the model inference is run in a trustless manner, but all the API calls also need to be run in a trustless manner. And that's really what AVSs in EigenLayer are. Let's say you want to call the internet and get some data from there. Okay, can I write an AVS? Is there some existing AVS that I can call, which will actually execute that thing and become an internet oracle and bring me that result? I want to actually verify that you got this result from calling a certain DoorDash API. How can I verify that, bring it on chain? Because this is an agent that's doing DoorDash calls for me. I want to make sure that its input output properties are actually consistent. And so each of these are already existing AVSs and new AVSs being built on top of EigenLayer. So there is a huge economy of agents that we anticipate will be built on top of this, because for the first time, agents themselves become verifiable. And these agents, the dominant thing, they need all these APIs, but the dominant thing they're consuming is GPU, right? Like they need to use GPUs in order to run their inference and then build things on top. So in that sense, this is a much broader strategic partnership for us. On the one side, we are supplying trust and for the GPU compute here, but also agents and other things built on top of EigenLayer will consume this output of this GPU compute and actually building new and useful services for the entire crypto and hopefully the entire Web2 economy.
Before we move on to the
100%.
last set of questions, Mark, I'm curious your thoughts around this whole AI agent renaissance, or I don't even know if I would call it that. It's kind of like just a big explosion of innovation that we're seeing happen right now. What are your thoughts about that? And also just AI in general, like how have you thought about it over the past years? Because it's obvious what you built is kind of like focused on specializing in that space.
Yeah, I love this agent explosion that we're seeing at the moment. I was, incredibly fascinated by agents about a year and a bit ago, right? When they started to really kind of gain traction in the Web2 space. I started to kind of advise and help agent projects that we're building in Web3, and it was like pushing a boulder uphill, right? There just wasn't really that much attention around what might be considered the retail side or the application side of AI, right? Everyone in crypto was very, very focused on the infrastructure needed to support AI in Web3, and Aethir benefited from that focus for sure. But I think we also followed this cycle that's relatively standard in crypto, where we over optimize for infrastructure again, and we get to a point where we're like, shit, shouldn't there be users here somewhere? We forgot about them again, right? Where we've got all of this stuff that we've built and no one's really using it. And now, I guess it actually took agents joining the conversation themselves on Twitter for people to start getting kind of interested, and for VCs and the broader sort of capital community to say, hey, this is something that we need to be kind of paying attention to. But I love it, right? Because what I find so exciting about this space, the application, the agent space, is that it's a very different set of teams and builders building agents as opposed to these big infrastructure projects, right? There's a lot more experimentation. There's a lot more capacity for innovation. You're going to get some like weird stuff, right? But it's going to be incredibly fun, right? Just to go through and kind of see what people are building. Also, I think the capability of developers to build agents is far larger than the capability of developers to build kind of big infrastructure projects, or at least the barrier to entry to building a big infrastructure project is much higher, right? So I love this. From a compute perspective, it's also really interesting because if an agent finds product market fit, right? If they have their viral moment, very, very, very quickly, they need huge amounts of compute, right? They can't scale their agent without access to compute. And you've got a big infrastructure project, you might be building for 2-3 years, like slowly scaling up your infrastructure requirements along the way. If you've got an agent that just hits a consumer need, overnight, you could need $1 million worth of GPUs, right? The ramp up into compute is so much more rapid, and also very, very time sensitive, right? If you've got something that people want, someone else is going to produce something if you can't get that and scale that in front of people. So for Aethir, I think we've been very much waiting for this moment. Generally, if you look at how training is distributed in the market, generally it aligns more with bigger companies with larger and deeper pockets, right? So the people buying compute, I guess you could think of that demand side of the market as being more centralized, right? On the application side, there's just far more builders. It's a much more fragmented ecosystem. There's a lot more opportunity, I think, for Web3 companies and compute providers in this space to access that compute and be the dominant provider. But it does require, a whole bunch of kind of grassroots interaction and support, right? I love what you guys are doing with the agent kind of pitches, right? I thought that was just super, super cool. I think we'd love to kind of do a similar thing, or maybe get involved and support you guys in that endeavor, because there's nothing more fun than hearing kind of what people are building in this space. We're lucky we have this $100 million ecosystem fund that we can deploy. I think, to be honest, if we hadn't necessarily had that fund in place, we would have been looking to set up the fund just so we could kind of interact with the ecosystem in the way we are now. But thankfully we did. But yeah, I mean, at Aethir, we built our fundamentals on the back of training infrastructure, because that's what the market was kind of very focused on when we were launching. This shift to inference and inferencing is actually, I think, better for us, right? Because access to that ecosystem and that demand for compute is kind of maybe easier for us to generate. But also the way that distributed networks benefit, inferencing style compute, right? We're far more distributed from a node perspective than a centralized compute provider, right? There's no incentive for the owners of compute in our ecosystem to centralize where that compute exists, right? They gain no financial incentive from having all of their compute under one roof, right? But you do in a centralized compute environment, right? So just by definition, we have a larger number of nodes and more distributed. There's a greater likelihood that if a user enters into an interaction with an inference required agent, that agent can be provided compute from a location that's more adjacent to where they are, and they have a better, more streamlined experience. But I've been rambling. I'm just happy about this transition.
We should definitely collaborate some in the near future, doing all types of stuff, because a lot of the things that you said resonated a lot. Yeah, the demo days have been a really great way to meet a lot of different types of builders from all over the place, really. I mean, we've Solana base, literally every ecosystem that you could imagine. But it's also been a really cool way to kind of open my mind to like what's possible, because we have not only the people that we've interviewed, but we also have all the people that have submitted. So I'm sitting here reading through this table of ideas, and I'm like, wow, like there's so many crazy things happening, and it's really fun, and it's been a cool experience. I was actually kind of skeptical on the intersection of AI and crypto about a year ago, because agents didn't exist, and also frameworks and tooling and all that stuff for developers didn't really exist. There wasn't a huge value proposition in my mind at the time, but there were a lot of people bullish on it back then. So obviously some people kind of saw this coming, which is kind of cool to see and meet those people that were kind of ahead of the curve, because those people always exist. But anyway, that was really interesting. So we're going to kind of move to the last questions to wrap this up. So what does Aethir kind of like look like today in terms of where you've kind of what you've achieved, and what does success maybe look like in the future, and maybe hint towards some of the roadmap items you might be working towards?
Yeah, so I think today we're very lucky. We're a very high performant cloud. We have great utilization on our network, and we've built a very, very strong revenue pipeline, right? Sitting, like I mentioned, around 110 mil in annual recurring revenue. You can't do that without a valid functional product, right? So we do have a cloud that provides a lot of value to our customers. We, like I mentioned, have 3 primary compute products: AI training, AI inferencing, and then this kind of cloud gaming element. What I would love to see in the future, and what I'm anticipating, definitely is a ramp up in the revenue that's generated by that inferencing component of our infrastructure, and we're very much leaning into that. That is kind of shifting a little bit in our appetite for certain types of compute. When we're looking at the market, we're opening and inviting compute providers into our ecosystem. It's influencing the type of compute that we want to kind of populate the network with. To be honest, looking at the roadmap, I really want, of course, Aethir to be kind of the dominant compute provider for AI agents and applications. I want people to think agents means Aethir, and Aethir means agents, right? I don't think there's a future for AI without AI agents, right? We very much kind of correlate AI with a ChatGPT experience today, right? That's kind of what people think AI is, and they just think that that it's just ChatGPT getting smarter, right? That's what AI is, just an increasing capability to get better answers over time from these LLMs. But for us to actually extract value from AI in the way that is going to be transformative for the world, you need not just the brain, right? But you need the arms and the legs, right? And that's what agents are. They're this execution layer for the brain that we're building, right? And you cannot have this kind of incredible future for AI without that execution layer, without agents. So I don't anticipate any future that exists where AI is kind of as incredible as we imagine it to be without this massive agent ecosystem, right? And then how agents interact with each other, how they trust each other, how they are verified, how we can trust agents. That's all infrastructure that's very, very well suited to crypto. It's a very, very exciting place.
That's incredible. So I think to wrap this up, it might be cool to just talk about the future of decentralized GPU infra, like in general, because I feel like this is not something that's obviously specific to crypto, even though it's enabled by crypto primitives and crypto rails. The value proposition of having this type of GPU and this type of compute available, less expensive, and all of that just should hit home to everyone in the world, which is exciting to me because we're always talking about the intersection of like traditional developers and crypto or blockchain. And I think with agents, we're seeing that also because of some of these frameworks are not focused on Web 2 developers specifically or Web 3 developers. They basically have both things kind of like intertwined. So Eliza, for example, is just a great agent framework. But by the way, we have like 1 million crypto APIs built in. So it's kind of like a nice way to kind of bring those together. Do you feel that you will see just any developer picking this up, using it, and taking advantage of it without caring or knowing that it's built on crypto rails? And also, kind of how do you feel that you see the future of this type of infrastructure? I'd like to hear from both of you.
Sure, I'll just quickly jump in. I think when I think about agents in the future, and I think about how retail will interact with agents, there does need to be this strong reputational element, right? This strong element of trust. And that trust needs to be built on the back of verifiability, right? And I think that as a developer looking to create an agent that has that verifiability and has that trust, right? You surely should be looking to the blockchain for that solution. So I think there is this natural fit. That doesn't necessarily mean every agent's going to be launching a meme token, right? I think that is just maybe a little bit of a current narrative within the cycle. I think obviously tokens are going to be associated with agents a lot in the future, but just maybe not to the extent or where tokens represent such an important piece of the agent, as opposed to the actual execution and capability of the agent being kind of more valuable than the token. But I think that's just a natural alignment between what a builder should be looking to achieve when they're producing an agent and just the natural capability of this ecosystem. And again, having these repos like Eliza kind of providing these really kind of plug and play almost interactions with crypto, I think that's just a massive win. We spoke about kind of the scalability of agents, and what happens when an agent hits kind of product market fit, right? How do they scale up? Well, I think something that is also really interesting to think about is if we've got agents out there that are capably operating on behalf of their users, transacting out there in the wild, maybe they're booking a hotel for you, maybe they're managing your portfolio. Well, it also makes sense that those agents will be able to purchase their own compute, right? They'll be able to realize, hey, I'm gaining traction. I'm having more API calls. Like I'm acting more. I need more inference. I need more compute capacity. And again, having that capability on the blockchain and the ability for us to kind of understand and track and have that verifiability of that access to compute, I think is again this kind of natural synergy between decentralized compute and the rails for compute access that we're establishing, and what this agent environment will need in the future. So definitely heard it here first. You'll be hearing about an Aethir compute agent at some point in the future. That's for sure.
Amazing. Sriram, do you have anything else to add before we wrap it up?
Yeah, it's definitely like an exciting development with the arrival of agents. I think we may see various ways in which it stratifies. One thing I think about is when you're looking for an agent that's doing some actions for yourself, and an individual is looking for an agent to do actions for themselves, is easier to for them to pick and delegate trust to somebody. Like, I like AWS, so I'm going to go with them, or I'm going to go with OpenAI, or something like that. It's possible, but there are collective action problems. If you think about why we built something like smart contracts, right, as a community, build smart contracts because these are things which can solve collective action problems. A DAO can put money into a smart contract and know that this money is only expended in this manner. So when you have a collective, when an agent is not acting on behalf of an individual, but when an agent wants to act on behalf of a collective, then you get into the problem of like, how does the collective know who to trust? Who's they, there are layers of principal agent problem that show up inside that. And having a layer of verifiability and trust into the agent completely solves that problem, right? Like, you have an agent which adjudicates for a DAO, various cases. Like, should this agent be running on like some central provider, or does it run on a decentralized, trustless, verifiable manner? So those are the kinds of places where I think the power of like the blockchain and like, verifiable trust shows itself most clearly. There's also the issue of like, even an individual, why am I trusting X or Y? And if the cost differential is not there, and I think this is where solutions like Aethir play a big role, is reducing the cost differential, even making it better than going to like a centralized cloud provider, right? Like, that's nominally we only talk about like, oh, crypto is always more expensive than like the regular world transactions, right? A transaction on a database is much cheaper than writing a transaction on Ethereum, right? Because Ethereum is just expensive. Whereas here is an example of like, I can go and buy like cloud GPUs maybe cheaper than if I can go like to AWS. And so that's a really cool new turn in the cost edge that we normally don't have in crypto, bringing that back in. So now you're suddenly seeing, oh, it's both verifiable and cheap. Like, that's going to blow this mind.
100%. Yeah, that hit hard with the whole cost and efficiency, because we're essentially flipping that on its head here. So this has been really interesting. I'm throwing up here a couple of places for you to check out Aethir. So they're at Aethir Cloud on X, and then athir.com. But I would like to know, Mark, do you have any other last things that you'd like to share for people that would like to maybe learn more or dive into Aethir?
Yeah, I think if you're interested in agents, pay attention to our ecosystem fund deployment, right? Every 1 or 2 weeks, we're selecting a batch of agents that we're investing in and supporting. It's really kind of a representation of what's cool and what's interesting to us in the agent ecosystem. So if you're looking for alpha, definitely take a look there. More broadly, if you're a builder in the space and you want kind of support from an ecosystem, whether that's kind of from a compute perspective or more even just kind of a mentorship and a support perspective, we're absolutely interested in kind of talking to you. My DMs are always open. The Aethir Cloud X account is also open. We'd love to kind of get in front of as many cool builders and great agent sort of projects as we can. So very, very just excited to be available to the massive kind of collection of builders out there.
Great. Any last words on your end, Sriram?
Super excited about this partnership and really looking forward to work with Mark and Aethir and his team.
Same here. So thank you, both of you guys. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Now I was going to say the same thing. I realized I needed to shill this EigenLayer partnership more because I don't think people understand how important this is. But no, we are incredibly happy to be partnering with EigenLayer. This is, as Shira mentioned, a massive friction point that exists in systems and marketplaces like ours. And having such an established player with that verifiability and that trust kind of programmed into what they've been building, what you guys have been building for so long is something that massively benefits our ecosystem. So we're just incredibly pumped to be working with you guys, and we think that this is going to be that one of those hockey stick moments that going to push our ecosystem up even higher.
Incredible. So really appreciate both of your time. I know both of you are super busy people, so this has been really great. And also thanks to 3,400 people that have tuned in so far. If you want to kind of catch this, we're going to have it on the YouTube channel. If you missed the beginning, we're going to have links to check out Aethir and also where to kind of connect with all of their different resources on the internet. So that wraps it up. We're going to be back hopefully soon with another one of these deep dives into the AVS ecosystem. So everyone have a great rest of your day or night, depending on where you are in the world.
Thank you.